Well, hello and welcome to Talk Leadership with Cedrick. Everybody needs a little TLC. Talk Leadership with Cedrick is where we focus on leadership and personal growth with business leaders, educators, and local thought leaders. Our goal is to introduce our audience to leaders who are making an impact with innovative ideas. See, our guiding leadership principle is the law of contribution, which says growing yourself enables you to grow others. See, you can't give what you don't have. So first, you must grow yourself in order to grow others. See, we believe outstanding leaders like yourself will help us help others. So tonight, we have with us another dynamic leader. Now, every week I like to do a proper introduction of my guest. So let me start off by doing a proper introduction of Mr. David DellaFave. So Dave, and I call him Dave. Dave and I worked in Abbott many years ago. We were 15 years old back then. Dave is a sales transformation catalyst, offering 20 plus years of unprecedented record-setting performance in high-profile global sales leadership positions for both startups and world-class healthcare and technology solutions companies. He is a focused and determined sales and business leader, driving top-line and bottom-line growth, inspiring teams to peak performance and cultivating profitable business relationships built on respect, loyalty, and trust. Dave has grown his career with companies such as Abbott Laboratories, Bayer Healthcare, Siemens, as well as Thermo Fisher Scientific. One of his most exciting ventures was as a startup medical device company that was a collaboration between the St. Johns Hopkins University and a Belgium-based company by the name of IMEC, where he led the efforts centered around commercial affairs and go-to-market strategies. In his younger days, Dave was a collegiate baseball player who then went on to play coach, on the high school and collegiate levels. Additionally, he worked for the Boston Red Sox and the New York Mets during summers as a local talent scout. Dave has 4 wonderful children, 2 girls ages 15 and 5, and 2 boys ages 13 and 3. Talking about doing it and then starting over again. That's Dave, right? And he said they're a true passion in his life. So let's welcome Mr. David DellaFave to the show.
Hello, my friend. How are you?
I am always doing great. How about yourself?
I am excited, first of all, to see another bald head like mine, even balder. But I am excited to see you as we go back, here almost 18 plus years to our time at Abbott together. But I've obviously seen all of the wonderful things that you've been doing personally, and I've admired you and the things that you've been doing from a leadership standpoint. So grateful to be here with you and to offer up some of the little snippets from my life in business and in my personal life as well that have led me to some special experiences, especially from a leadership standpoint. So I couldn't be more grateful that you thought of me to have you on your show. So thank you, and such a pleasure to be here.
Well, awesome. Well, I'm excited to have you here on the show as well. And yes, we worked in global marketing many years ago together at Abbott. And guys, I'm going to tell you what, Dave, when we're in our younger days in marketing, Dave would always come in sharp, very serious. I mean, when you talk about, hey, let's get down to business, that was Dave. So I'm excited to have you here tonight. Let's just have a conversation.
Yeah, thank you.
So, hey, Dave, I read your bio, but, people like to hear it directly from you as well. So tell our listeners about your journey to leadership and how did you get to where you are today?
Yeah, I think, as I look back at all the different roles that I've had over the course of my career, and as you stated during the intro, big corporate and some startups as well. I think no matter what the role was, I kind of always go back to when I was a teenager, and I had certain principles that my parents kind of instilled in me. Some of them a little bit obviously stronger than others,
Hmm.
to shape me as who I was as a young adult. But also, from an athletic standpoint, having coaches who tried to get the most out of you in a number of different ways, tried to instill discipline in you from a number of different ways. And I look at all the different leaders that I had been around. And I remember, I can say to you, I remember a story. I was 16 years old. I was at a college pro camp, and I was a participant there. And one of the coaches, as we were walking to lunch, he said to me, "Hey, DellaFave, how's it going?" And I said, "You know what? My head's spinning. I've got 17 different coaches telling me 17 different things." And he said, "Well, here's the best thing you can do, Dave. Take all 17 of those and come up with a Dave DellaFave way of doing it." And that has stuck with me to be able to remember that 32 years later, that you look at other people and you kind of build the way that you need to do things. That really stuck with me. So, I think I've been very fortunate to have a bunch of different roles over my career. And I think in order to really understand business, sometimes you do things you don't want to do, but it makes you better. Sometimes you make sacrifices. You and I have relocated, I don't know how many times in our life, right?
Right.
With our families, right? But it made us better as who we are as not only business people, but as dads and significant others and friends and etc. But I think just having a holistic approach at all of the different facets of business that have been out there over the past 20 plus years for me really has defined who I am from a business perspective. And then a funny thing happens on the way to 48 years old, right? Some of your priorities change,
Right.
and some of your energy gets pushed into other areas that become much more important for you. And so I think I've been able to learn all of that throughout the course of my professional career. It has made me better as a person because of what I've been able to do, and the people like you and others who I've been able to be around have made me a better person at this stage of my career.
Well, awesome. That is definitely awesome. And so, when I was going through the questions, I didn't realize that you had played college sports.
I
So,
did, yeah.
with being a collegiate athlete and then a professional talent scout, help us understand when you were scouting for those teams, were there certain qualities that you were looking for in players, certain leadership qualities, I should say, in players as you were writing your assessment on different players you were looking at?
Yeah, I think for me, it was really two things, Cedric. I think first and foremost was character. What was the character of that athlete? Were they hustling all the time? Did they help out their teammates? Did they pat someone on the back when they did something wrong, or did they do the opposite and point out the mistake,
Mhm.
and get on someone's back because they did something wrong, and instead of maybe helping them do it the right way. So character certainly is a big component of things. I think you've seen, certainly over the years in athletics, when it comes time to for the drafts, whether it's the NBA, the NFL, whatever it may be, they always talk about these tremendous athletes, but there's some questions about his character, and that's when teams maybe shy away from people. And I think it was no different when I was, working those summers and watching these players and then delivering the information back, or when I got asked by the head scout, what do you think of that person? I would share that with them. And then I think, there's a right way to do things and there's a wrong way to do things.
Mhm.
And I think, I always look at, do they do things the right way, which meant, again, did they play the game the way it was meant to be played, or did they play it selfishly? Did they approach their teammates? Did they approach their competition with respect? The game is meant to be played a certain way, and that's no different than in our personal lives today, or in our professional lives today. Things are meant to be done a certain way, and so I think those were the two things that I would look at that you can apply directly to leadership. Does he or she, as a leader, do they have very good character? Are they somewhat character? Are they someone that if they left tomorrow, would you want to go work with them wherever they ended up? Doesn't even matter where they went, but would you want to go work with them and follow them to where they went? And then, that's a result of, do they do things the right way, and do they treat people with respect? And so I think all of that, certainly you can tie into, ultimately, are those people the types of leaders that other people want to be around, make people better at what they do, and aren't afraid to have other people make them better at what they do as well. I think that's another important aspect of this whole thing.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for that. So, you've had a long a career, some of this at the corporate executive level. Help our audience understand the role that your experiences have helped shape your leadership style.
Yeah, I think it's probably been the positions where I've had to manage without authority. And I've had to get people to do things without being their immediate boss or their immediate supervisor. And so I look at a role like being a sales trainer at one part of my career, for about 2 years. And those folks that I worked with, they had a manager. He or she had a manager. And those guys and gals, they had someone that they reported to. They didn't take their marching orders from me. They took it from, their boss. But I had to find ways to motivate and inspire these individuals to maybe do things differently than they were used to doing them, to look at things differently than they had traditionally looked at them based on where they came from. So I think, having that ability to relate with someone without being their direct boss, and getting them to accomplish successes, and challenge the status quo, if you will, of how things need to get done without being their direct supervisor, I think enabled me to really see what makes people tick, what makes guys and gals get up every morning to want to go and do their jobs. And I think that was, a huge, huge step in my leadership voyage, if you will, and helped me because immediately from that role, I moved into one of my first leadership roles. And I think having that experience right before becoming a manager was absolutely beneficial. When I became a young manager and took over a team that had seasoned veterans on it. So I would probably point at that. It was also one of the most fun positions that I've ever held as well. Not to say working with you wasn't fun in marketing. I wouldn't say that, but certainly I think that was one of the most fun positions because you got to see people grow, and you got to see people succeed at an early stage in their career with the company, and that selfishly you had a little bit to do with that, but also when you look at it through the lens that they were willing to make themselves vulnerable and do some things they had never done before, and that put them in a successful position. And so that was probably one of the most fun jobs at the same time as it helped me become a leader as well.
Awesome. Some people are reluctant to take lateral positions. Some people are reluctant to take positions that they feel is a step backwards. In your career, I know you've had a lot of different roles, but have you ever had to take a lateral position in order to help you move forward? And if so, talk to our audience about the importance of sometimes you have to move sideways in order to jump ahead.
Yeah, I think especially in today's business environment, if we just use healthcare as an example, and I'm sure in your audience you have people from all different industries and environments across business. But if we just use healthcare as an example, we know how much healthcare has changed over the course of the last. Forget it. Last 3 years, last 5 years, last 10 years, right?
Right.
And who the heck knows what's going to happen on a week from today? And then in January, things could change. Things could change again. And that'll be the extent of my political commentaries for this evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'll stay completely away from that, as I was persuaded to by the owner of this podcast. But if you think about how much business changes in every industry, as an individual, think about how important it is to understand business holistically. And so, you and I certainly have played the sales role, right? But we've also played all these other roles in our careers that we had to take a sidestep in order to learn about new functions in business and the activities of those functions that help to run the business that we had no idea. And you think about when we went into marketing together, I certainly didn't have the slightest clue about the P&L of our product lines. Right. And if, I remember, we taking a dollar bill, and we took that dollar bill and we cut it into pieces, right? And we said, well, this portion goes for this part of the business, and this portion goes for this part of the business, and this portion goes to R&D, and this portion goes for our salaries. And at the end of the day, there was about that much left that was called profitability, right? I had no clue. Had I not gone and done something that, did I want to, uproot my family and move and pack boxes and go into an office every single day? Yeah, probably not. Probably not. But you know what? Made me a better business person. Holistically, now I had a holistic view at the business, and it challenged me to become much better with my business acumen in understanding the business. To then, when I took my next role, which was a promotion, I did not just go in there with blinders on. Quite often, if you only are in one vertical, you're going to only see the business from that one vertical. And those blinders will, not enable you to see things holistically at from a 360-degree lens, right?
Right.
And so certainly my career and your career, because we, I'll say it and it'll sound a little funny, but we had to do some things we didn't want to do in order to do things we wanted to do. Absolutely. Right. And I think that's very important in business, especially today with things changing so much, that you can take a role that's a lateral. But if you go into it with a mindset, number one, it's going to make me better as a business person. Number one. Number two, I'm bringing a different perspective to this position than maybe someone else has. Right. And I'm going to think differently about the business in this role than maybe someone else has. And maybe I'll challenge the status quo of the way that we run the business in this certain function. Now, all of a sudden, you can contribute and start doing things that maybe you thought you never were capable of doing. And people see that, and people maybe admire it. Certainly, they recognize it, but perhaps they reward it. And they reward it by putting you in positions to get even more visibility. And that's where you can start to grow your career into areas that maybe when you took the role, you never thought that was going to be the case. Right. But that's what you ended up doing. So, yeah, certainly, I think it's some people look at, well, why would you go backwards? Why would you do that? You've been this and you've been that. Why? Well, because you know what? at the end of the day, I'm going to become a better person for it. I'm going to become a better business person for it. And I'm going to be better for the organization as a result of that. And that may be a healthcare company. It may be, a nonprofit. It may be, your church. It may be whatever you're involved in. That may absolutely be the case.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think that when you hear the word, well, they want me to take a lateral position, or they want me to do this, and it's not going to be additional money. What you have to decide on, is this position going to help you learn a skill that you don't currently have?
100%. Yep.
Yeah. And then having this skill, does it make you more valuable to the organization?
Mm-hmm.
So then if you say yes to those two questions, okay, well, maybe I need to take this role so that it helps me, not for that next role, but for that next level.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And, I talk about it an awful lot with people now. And, you and I in the past, I have my own website where I've got a blog on there. And a lot of times on my blogs, I just talk about thinking differently and looking at things differently and challenging yourself, almost forcing yourself to look at things differently, because it makes you, at the end of the day, it makes you better at what you do or what you want to be when you grow up. You will be a better individual for having done that, and you will be a higher level contributor for having done that. And to me, there's no negative to do that. Again, I'll go back to the statement of, sometimes you have to do things you don't want to do, or you think you don't want to do, so that you can do things you want to do. But you know what? Going into a role like like a marketing role, where now all of a sudden you're sitting in a cube and you're not out and about in front of people every single day, and you don't have the expense account, and you don't have the cars, and you don't have the meetings, and you're literally doing almost the same things every single day. You may think that isn't something that you want to do, but at the end of, let's just say, 24 to 36 months, you're going to be so much better off because you have seen things you never thought were a part of business. And that's going to be so imperative to the success that you have, maybe in your next role, maybe in the role after that, maybe in the role, and you will always come back to that role, and you will always look at it and you go, had I not done that, you and I would not be sitting here having this conversation today.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So, Dave, obviously 2020, we've had a lot of different crises. And as a leader, you have to manage through crisis. And as a leader, you have to project that calm demeanor to everybody else, so that they don't panic. Mm-hmm. Right. But in those moments, as a leader, a high level leader, how do you manage that? When you're away from everybody else, how do you manage that, staying calm, and who do you call to help you manage through those difficult times?
First and foremost, I always remember a conversation that I had just prior to getting into my first management role, that I had with one of our executives that I sought out to talk to about leadership, about managing people, about being at a higher level in my career. And I always remember that person. We talked about 17,000 different things, but the one that I always will remember is when I asked what makes a great leader in that person's eyes. And that person said to me, no matter what's going on out here, no matter what's going on in here, in this mind, no matter what's going on in this heart, no one else knows. No one else can see it. It may be a circus in here. It may be the Indianapolis 500 in here, going around and around and around. And you may be thinking about a zillion different things and panicking about things and emotional about things. But out here on this conversation with my team, chatting with this guy or gal, no one knows that's going on. And you have a very calm approach, and you remove the emotion from the conversations, from the direction, from the plan, because people have a tendency to panic, right?
Right.
And you and I have been in those conversations with either peers or direct reports, and I always, I've always leaned to, hey, Jill or Joe, first off, let's try to remove the emotion from this. Okay, if we can remove the emotion from this, then we have a much clearer line of sight and a much clearer lens that we can look at this to make a very informed, unemotional, calm, specific decision on things. And you ask, who do I talk with in those situations? I find it very important in leadership that everyone has that right-hand person. Everyone's got that right-hand person when they're in a leadership role. And I've been very fortunate in the leadership roles that I have had that right-hand person that, I should probably give them my Blue Cross Blue Shield card, because they're like my therapist, right? And because the things that they have to hear, I should give them a copay every time I talk with them, because they have to hear all of that stuff that I can't say to everyone else. But I think you have those loyal, trustworthy people by your side, and every leader has followership, right? You certainly in your roles had people that when you went to the next role, they came with you. When you went to the next role, they came with you. We all leaders have those people. And I think it's imperative that you have that type of person on your team that you can go to, and you can have that conversation where, maybe you have to pound your fists on the table, but it's behind the scenes and no one else is seeing it, right? And you can vet out the different options that might be viable to solve that crisis with, and then be very confident when you go out, because you had this person that you knew you could trust and you can have those conversations with. So I think for me, I've been very fortunate to always have that type of person on my staff that became my right hand, and I was able to have those types of conversations with.
Okay, awesome. Well, I know that definitely having that person that you can lean on in those moments, those confidential conversations you can have with that person, so that then you can go out to the public and the rest of the team and be calm, cool, and collective, and they're like, wow, that was good.
Yeah. You and I unfortunately lived at a time during earlier on in our career where we lived through some chaotic, crisis-filled times, right? Where we weren't sure if we needed someone else to start our cars for us when we left the parking lot, because of all the issues that we had with products and quality and things of that nature. But when we delivered the message to the people who needed to have the message, it was in a very informed, very, very strategic, very calm manner that put them at ease, right? And they felt like they could handle anything that was thrown at them, because the other folks around them approached it the right way.
Yes, you're absolutely right about that. And Dave, leaders come in all different types of packages with different strengths, right?
Mm-hmm.
What are strengths? What strengths do you feel are important to be successful as a leader?
Well,
and I know that there's a lot, but
there's a lot. But when you ask me that question, I think about one of the last teams I had, and they always would make. There was this running joke. They were like, any second, Dave's going to drop an Amazonian. Watch Dave. He's going to, at some point in this conversation, he's going to say, you got to think Amazonian. And listen, yes, I like obviously what Amazon has created for all of us, right? But I like how they did it early on. If you ever read the book, and I wrote it down to make sure that I had it here, it's called The Everything Store, and it's a book about Jeff Bezos and basically how Amazon was created. So forget all the stuff about Amazon from the last 3 or 4 years, and all the negativity that you think. But think about this entrepreneur that started this business and thought differently, and everyone around him, he or she was allowed to come up with ideas and run with those ideas, and wasn't what was led with. And so I think about leadership, and I think about don't lead with no. Don't lead with no. Think of it. Think Amazonian, and again, I'm thinking about my team. They're checking off tick marks as I would say the word, and it was almost like a game where every time Dave would say it, you had to take a shot when I said it. But don't lead with no. Lead with, if we're going to be able to do it, what's it going to take to do? And give people that autonomy in the roles that they have to think differently, come up with ideas that have never been done before. What's it going to take to get there? What's the investment that we have to make? What's the support that you need? Who else needs to just, give a thumbs up on it? If leaders take that approach, as far as I'm concerned, your business, the sky's the limit in terms of what your business can be capable of doing, especially in the areas where you have differentiation. Because as you know, Amazon approaches business as if every day is day number one. That's their big thing, right? It's day number one, because if it's day two, someone's caught up to me and they've passed me already. So every day we have new ideas and we think differently. And that's why, in the most recent role that I had, in the first few months on the job of running the organization, I got an awful lot, Cedrick, and you've heard this. Well, that's not the way we've done it here. And well, we've never done that here before.
Yeah.
Fantastic. That's great. Let's try something different. Let's challenge the status quo. Let's think differently. What's the worst that can happen with a business that's eroding 4%, right? We grow 4%, or we grow 2 points here, or we find markets that want our product that we hadn't called on previously, or we challenge the organization to invest in some areas that we know that we can grow. So I just, I think thinking differently and challenging the status quo as a leader, important, the right way. You're not coming in like a bulldozer, right? You're very thought out about it, and you're well versed in your approach, and you're educated on the approach that you want to take. I think in today's leadership, I think is very important. I think if you as a leader want to come in and be very cookie cutter in the approaches that you take, again, these are editorial commentaries from me, right? And here I am. I'm not sitting back in my retirement chair anytime soon. But I just think in the way that business is today, if you are cookie cutter in what you do, and you rely on kind of the same old go-to-market strategy, marketing strategy, sales strategy, you're going to fail more than you're going to win. So to be a strong leader, I think you've got to do three things. I think you've got to challenge the status quo. I think you've got to then think differently. And then thirdly, guess what? I think you have to, and I will quote the great Brene Brown, who's one of my favorites on podcasts next to you. She is fan. Yep, I knew you'd get. I'm making sure you're listening while you're writing things down.
Yeah. I'm writing notes while you talk.
Yeah, but Brene Brown is a fantastic speaker on life, and she talks about embracing vulnerability. And as a leader, I think all too often, and especially in the time that you and I grew up in business, leaders were, they were tough and they were like nails, right? And they had this hard exterior to them. And it was hard to crack. But I think, Brene Brown puts it beautifully when she says, good, strong leaders embrace vulnerability so that people can see that at the end of the day, you know what? They're a person just like you. And you can empathize and sympathize with people in the way that their lives are and what they have to do every single day. I think it's important for folks to know that, yeah, a big deal. I'm up on stage in front of 3,000 people. Who cares?
Right.
Who cares? At the end of the day, I want my organizations, as a leader, to know that I care about them, to care about them individually. Because you know what? If we miss a number by 0.1, but I've got someone whose mom or dad is going through a very hard situation with cancer, let's just say, or dare I say it, COVID, where we are right now, in our lives. Being there for them and giving them what they need, and showing the care that they deserve as a human being, I think makes you an even stronger leader than someone who comes in and pounds their fist on the table and says, we missed by 0.1, and we're gonna take your car keys away from you, and things of that nature. It's not 1986 anymore. You know what I mean? Like that keep your keys strategy, as far as I'm concerned, that has to go away. I think it shows more maturity. I think it shows more professional maturity to be able to look at people and sympathize and empathize with them than it does to have that hard exterior and pound your fist on the table, as a leader. So that's me making myself vulnerable, because I get very passionate about that type of leadership, versus certainly leaders that you and I grew up with, who, guess what, really successful guys and gals who were really good at what they did. They made the organization better. The organization grew, but this is a much different time. This is a much different environment that we're in. It's much more of a people centric approach that we have to take, as far as I'm concerned, as a leader, than it has ever been, and probably, let's hope, will ever be.
Sure.
Because everyone starts to see things a little bit differently as things move on.
Yeah, absolutely. And you hit on several different things. One is the law of connection, says leaders touch the heart before they ask for the hand. That's
Love it.
Right. The second thing is, John Maxwell wrote this book called Leadership, and it's the shift that leaders have to make in this time in order to connect with their people. And that's really what you touched on, is about connecting with the heart of people before you ask them to go and dig that ditch, or go and do this, or get that number, or whatever that is. Let them know, you said it very early on, people need to know you care for them individually, right? You may not know everything about their situation. That's not important. They need to know, though, that you care about them, and you care for their health, their safety, and yes, that they reach their goals in life, right? And when people feel that, then they go the extra mile for you.
I couldn't agree more. And you're never going to have 100% customer satisfaction, right? As a leader, it's just not possible to have. But I think taking that approach that you just talked about, I have a and it's a book. It's a kid's book, and you may know it. But there's this book about, there's always a string that our hearts are attached, no matter, as a parent, to your kids. So whether you're in Houston and your children are in Canada or wherever they are, there's always this string from your heart to their heart. And my kids and I, we always talk about that no matter where they are. Well, it's almost like you want to take that approach with your people in business as well, is that no matter where they are, they should know that the person in charge has a string, in my opinion, that they have that care, that they have that compassion, that they have that type of approach. And some people will listen to this, and some people will look at this and they will laugh at it, and they may say, well, you can't run a business and be successful that way. And I say, you know what? I think you can. I think, to your point, connecting with the heart before you connect with the hand might be something that I copy and steal from you and John Maxwell.
Sure, absolutely. Well, you're more than welcome to take it.
Thank you. Thank you.
So, we have a segment of the show that we call Would You Rather, right? So indulge me as we go to this segment here, and I was gonna pull up my Would You Rather streamer.
Okay. Interesting how you didn't tell me about this part when we set up this podcast together. Yeah. Nice surprise. Surprise.
You always got to have a little surprise. This is actually very easy.
Yeah.
Would you rather have lived in the 1870s or in the 1970s? Well, you actually lived in the 1970s. Well, let me take it a little bit back. 1850s or 1950s?
I think I would have rather lived in the 1950s because I would have loved to see what my parents were doing in the 1950s, so that I could then have yelled at them for their behaviors when they were teenagers, because it came around that I was getting yelled at when I was a teenager. So I'm gonna go back. I'm gonna say 1950s. I hope that's okay.
Okay, all right, I like that. Would you rather have a car that could fly or a car that could go underwater?
I would say, I am fascinated by the sea. I'm fascinated by the life that exists at the bottom of the ocean, that no one knows about because the ocean is so deep. So I'm going to go with, I would rather have a car that can go underwater.
Okay, all right, two more. Would you rather be able to read minds or be invisible?
Oh, I think if I take it, I probably should take one of these as a business leader. I will say I would rather be able to read minds, so I know what's going on. I'm pretty good, I think, at reading nonverbals, body language, things of certainly eye rolls. I've got 4 kids. I get an awful lot of that. But I think being able to read people's minds as a leader certainly would give you a leg up when you're making decisions.
Yeah, see, I'd say, hey, let me be invisible so then I can just walk in the room and I can hear what they think.
Yeah, the problem is they're all on their phones and they're texting it all. So you'd have to get real close so you can see. I know I would have to keep doing this because my eyes have gotten so bad as I've gotten older.
Yes, last one. So, talking about Jeff Bezos, would you rather have $1 million in Amazon gift cards or $100,000 in real money?
I think I would rather have the Amazon gift cards because I would like to distribute them to all the people who need something in their lives that they're not able to purchase, and that Amazon card would allow them to do that. I would love to just put them in a pile and have people come and get them that need something in their life. That would go a lot further than that $100,000 in cash would, given what I would like to do with it.
That is awesome, Dave. You just said something that no one's ever said in this segment around doing it like using it like this. They said they would take the $100,000 and do something with it or invest it or whatever. And I said I would take the $1 million gift cards and figure out how to get regular gift cards so that then I can invest it. But you just said something. You just took it to a whole nother level. It was not about you. It was about other people. So I like that. I'm going to remember that when people
Thank you.
Do this. That's awesome.
Thank you.
Good leaders ask great questions. What have been some of the best questions that either you've asked people or someone has asked you and you went, wow, that's a really great question?
How are you feeling? Tell me how you're feeling. Tell me what you're thinking. And then a follow-up to that is not a question, but it's an acknowledgement of those thoughts and those feelings. I think certainly in any good relationship that you have, whether it's business or personal, everyone has feelings, everyone has thoughts. And I think it's good to know how people are feeling, what are they thinking? And so that you can talk about it, you can acknowledge it, you can maybe make something better for them. It seems very simplistic, but When was the last time you just, talked to someone that you worked with and just say, hey, how are you feeling? How are you feeling about things that are going on? How are you feeling about the changes that are going on here? I'd like to really understand kind of where your head is. And then as a leader, you could certainly, first and foremost, acknowledge it, right? Just like any good relationship that you have with your significant other, with your family members, with, business is no different. Cross-functional relationships in business, treat them no different than you do your personal life. And I guarantee you will get further. But if you just ask the question, how are you feeling? What are you thinking about that? Tell me your opinion. Do you think we're heading in the right direction? I think some of the most simple behavioral questions and simple questions about you can see this theme I'm on here tonight, right?
Mhm.
It's all about people. It's all about the human being. I think the more those questions are asked, the more you develop that sense of chemistry amongst a team, that sense of trust amongst people, that sense of leadership certainly gets heightened, but that sense that there's caring in your organization will keep your organization running. It'll keep your organization, certainly the retention rates of your organization should remain high. I think if you look at statistics, I think that would probably be the case. You and I both know what's the number one reason why people leave a job. You can hear money and you can hear this. They leave because they don't like the person that's leading, right?
Absolutely.
Either their direct leader or that leader's leader, or whoever. That's why they leave. And you know what? As I've gotten older, that's true. That's
Yeah.
absolutely true. So, I think some of the best questions that have been asked, that people have asked me, are just, how are you doing? How are you feeling about that? How are you, what are you thinking? I think those are some of the best questions that can be asked and that you can ask, especially as a leader.
Yes, I absolutely love that. By the way, and thank you for that book recommendation, The Everything Store. And I'm going to gift that book to every person that wants to download that book. I just put a link on your in the comments. So if you want that
Oh,
book,
great.
click the link and you can download that book, The Everything Store. It's about Jeff Bezos and Amazon. So that link is in the comments for you. So thanks for that recommendation.
Sure.
I'm a big reader and I love helping people improve themselves. And that's going to be a book that I'm going to read it first, and then we're going to probably use it in one of my groups as a book study.
Very
Uh,
nice.
so, last few questions here. What role does networking play in matriculating the corporate ladder?
Well, I think I think it's critical. I think it's critical to meet new people, to have visibility in an organization. When they're looking for volunteers, you're the first one to raise your hand, even before you know what you're raising your hand for. Maybe they're asking for a volunteer to accept that $1 million of Amazon gift cards. Who knows? But that allows you to meet new people, to have different conversations again that you never maybe thought you were going to have.
Hmm.
And then that person, gets to know you. You get involved in maybe some employee resource groups that your company may have. I know one of the biggest learning experiences I had, Cedric, was when I was the executive sponsor of an employee resource group at one of my companies, and I went to all the meetings and I met new people. And then those people weren't afraid, when they're walking down the hall to stop and talk to other people. And I think that's important. As you network, you develop those relationships, and now it makes you more confident in who you are. And people start to know who you are. And, that also comes with working really hard, right? And having success at what you do. Sure, that's a given. But, you could be the hardest worker and have the most success, and no one could know who you are, right?
Right.
So it's important to again, get out of your comfort zone, talk with people, ask people if they have a few minutes to chat. Make sure you have an agenda. that you have in mind when you go talk with them, so you're just not going off the cuff. Some people have that ability to just walk in a room and do that. Some people don't, so have a few notes written down. But I think it's critical, and I think it's important, especially think about LinkedIn, right? Think about the capabilities at your fingertips on LinkedIn to click on one person who you're connected with, who's then connected to 875 other people that you could potentially connect with. And guess what? For the most part, they probably will return your note. They will probably be open to having a 15-minute conversation. They will probably be open to returning the 2-question, in-mail that you sent to them. And now that's a new member of your network that will be critical to you growing as a business person.
Yeah, absolutely. 100% agree with you. I think sometimes people don't use it as much as they want to, and I'm guilty of that as well. I could have networked a whole lot differently or better when I was in corporate. So great advice there. Last set of questions is going to be around mentoring. As a executive leader, you want to always help other people in the organization. So what role does mentoring play? So it's a kind of 3-part question. I'm gonna let you answer that, then I'll ask the second part and third part to that question.
Okay. I think, yeah. So if I may, I think, mentoring individuals within an organization, I think is a critical part of being a leader. Taking people under your wing, and showing them the different lenses that can be utilized in looking at business, in challenging them to think differently about the role that they're in and how can they make it better. Having them come to you with questions, I think is critical to an organization, because then that person's going to go on and potentially become a mentor for someone else. And it may not be an official mentor, but it may be that they can offer a solution to someone else that they may be working with, and now all of a sudden they're viewed as a subject matter expert, or the person to go to in that situation. So I think every leader should absolutely take that on, number one. And number two, it's critical to any organization to have mentors available to other people.
Sure, absolutely. So what's the best way for, we have some people that are new to corporate life. Some people are junior emerging leaders. Some are junior leaders, and they're already leading people, but they haven't approached like a senior leader or even executive leader to be their mentor. What's the best way for people to approach you as an executive leader, for you to be their mentor?
I think, first of all, a strong leader is inviting of that already without it being said. So they make an effort to talk with others as their days go on. But I think it's important that, people who have career plans, who know what they want to be when they grow up, and they need someone to help them get there. I have always, first of all, I've always been honored when someone has said, Dave, could I get 30 minutes on your schedule sometime when you have it? Because I know you're busy, but when you have it, there's just some things I'd like to chat with you about in terms of business, and I'd like to pick your brain. I'm honored anytime anyone has to do that. But I think the reason why a lot of times people do that, as a leader, you've got to be inviting of that. You've got to have, when you're in the office, your door is always open. And I mean, literally, your door is always open, because if someone walks by, they can maybe peek their head in. And if you're not on the phone, they can say, hey, Dave, do you have just 1 second? Or Cedrick, do you have 1 second? Is there any chance next week when you're in the office, I could get 2 minutes with you or 5 minutes with you? I think it's important that people, number one, as a leader, it's inviting. And number two, that people sense it, that they take advantage of it and look for the opportunity to get that 5, 10, 30 minutes with that leader to get some advice.
Awesome. Well, it's definitely important that people step up and ask for that. And when they do it, they have to take that mentor-mentee relationship serious, right? They
100%.
can't waste the executive's time. And I always tell people it's on the mentees. It's the mentee's responsibility to own that relationship. Everybody's going to have a part,
Mm-hmm.
but it's important
Mm-hmm.
that the mentee own the relationship, right? So, last question for you, Dave. If there was a book that was written about you, what would the title be, and what would the summary in the back of the book say about you?
I would love for the name of that book to be growth. And then I think the summary in the back of that book would be how the path that I had to take, both fortunately and unfortunately, to grow as a person, as a human being, in order to be the best person that I could be, so that I could then be the best person for everyone around me, whether it was my personal life or my professional life. Because unless you are the best you, and you grow as a person, you are not. I don't believe you can be the best for other people in your life. So I'd like the book to be called Growth, and that's what I'd like the summary to be about.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. It's amazing how this time really flies. But I have thoroughly enjoyed you being on the show. Hopefully, you've enjoyed it as well. And I know that you provided a lot of great nuggets for our audience to take away, about talking about character, asking the question, are you doing things the right way? Right? Extremely important. Leader strengths. You shared with us the title to the book, The Everything Store. If you want that book, in the comments section, you can click on the link and download that book. Dave says it's a great book about Amazon. The other thing is, David said, for strengths is about thinking differently, thinking differently, embracing vulnerability, and the last one, I'm trying to read my writing. Oh, challenge the status quo. When your writing gets a little cold, it's always hard to read it. And then great questions, right? Good leaders ask great questions. How are you feeling? Just very simple. How are you feeling? That's really letting people know right up front you care about them as a person versus the number. And then, what are you thinking? Another great question to encourage people to bring their creativity and their innovation to your organization, because you're asking them about them before you start the conversation about the numbers. Now, don't get it confused, folks. You're going to still need to bring the goods when it comes to the number.
That's correct.
Because if not, you're not going to be feeling good when you leave. No, I'm just kidding. But, well, thank you again, Dave, for being on the show. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's my pleasure, and my honor, and it's been a good time catching up with you as well.
Yes, and you can stay in contact with Dave. His website is streaming across the bottom of the page. It's DellaFave.com. So click on that link and go to his page. See what he has. Support Dave's cause. And as we always say to our audience, it's important that we broaden our horizons. We look to other people for what they're doing and how they're doing it, because when we look to other people, we learn things about ourselves, and we learn things about other people, more importantly. So, folks, next Monday and Tuesday night, we have two more outstanding guests for you. Next Monday night at 6:30 Central Time, we will have our special guest on Talk Leadership with Cedrick will be Miss Sarah Hollywell. And you're going to love Sarah. And then Tuesday at 5:30 Central Time on Talk Leadership with Cedrick, our special guest will be Miss Venetia Bailey. And you're absolutely going to love this leader. and what both of them are going to be able to bring, both of these ladies are going to be able to bring to your mindsets, to your team, and potentially to your organization. So right after we're finished here at 6:30 Central Time, in just a matter of a few minutes, we're going to be on the Black Entrepreneurs Institute live show. You know, every week we do our live show on the Empower Living platform, and tonight we are interviewing a teenage entrepreneur by the name of Michael Desert, or it may be Desert, but it's we'll just go with Deserts. And Michael is a teenager who is turning things upside down in his own business. So get your kids to tune in as well at 7:30. Come right back here on Facebook and listen to Talk with TK, and TK with her Mindset 180 Academy. Thursday, remember, Talk Leadership with Cedrick on the radio is going to be at 4 p.m. on ibgr.network. And always remember, folks, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. Don't be on the menu. Thank you. Good night and have a great week.